Tonight on Cosmic Cantina, we're back and we're firing on all cylinders, digging deep into the idea behind metallic elements, in particular, iron. What is it about this amazing multidimensional metal that connects us to experiences with alien beings? We interview biophysicist William Brown about how metals interact with our DNA. All this and some very sexy methods for getting rid of evil. So strap in for some good times at the Cosmic Cantina. I'm your host, Melissa Tittle, and every week I go to my favorite bar, Cosmic Cantina, and kick back with my co-hosts, Josh Golombeski and Matt O'Connor. We talk about aliens, Bigfoot, ghosts, ancient cultures, and anything from the unseen world that needs a little illumination. Welcome to Cosmic Cantina. I'm your host, Melissa Tittle, and tonight I got myself some Sauvignon Blanc.
Classy.
Very summery. White wine is delectable in the summer, not in the winter. Tonight, I'm drinking Corona Light. It's kind of gluten-free. It has under 20 parts per million of gluten in it, so it will only upset me a little bit, but it's a very summery beer. I'm enjoying myself. I went to Florida recently, drank like 30 of them, so I'm back.
In a Bigfoot glass, no less.
You know it. That's my style.
Right on. Very nice.
What are you back drinking, O'Connor? Welcome back to Australia. What are you not
Thank you.
No, United States. He's back in the United States. Thank
back in the States. Yeah. Well, look,
my brain works.
It's pretty fantastic to be drinking in the evening and not the morning again, I have to say.
It's less funny.
Because that was beginning to take its toll. Anyway, that aside.
You're a good teammate, friend.
I got a little cider action going on from Seattle, dry cider, and it's good stuff. One of my favorites.
All right.
So get into it.
And
yeah.
Thank you, our loyal audience. We have not been consistent with our podcast, and mainly I want to blame it on our dear friend Matt, because he's been in Australia, and for some reason they don't have internet there. Everything's slow. They can't get things edited. So we apologize, but it's mostly Matt's fault. So just want to point that out. We are back.
The electricity runs off a wombat in a wheel, basically, for everyone's house. So we have limitations, is what I'm saying.
We have limitations, but now he's stateside.
Anyway,
we are going to continue
I'm back, baby. Let's do it.
to deliver our shows on a weekly basis, unless one of us goes on vacation, God forbid.
Yep.
But we are back, so we apologize. Thank you for still listening and being so awesome, because we do this for you guys.
Yes.
All right. Let's get into what we're talking about.
What are we talking about?
I did an interview with William Brown, who works at Taurus Tech. If you don't know what Taurus Tech is, it's Nassim Harameyn's company. He's a quantum physicist. And William Brown is a molecular biologist, and he works in genetics. And this is a very interesting interview. And we're going to correlate some of the stuff that he talks about with alien abductions and alien contacts. What do you guys got?
Ooh, well, I am fascinated by this podcast. I went into iron and the amazing properties of iron and got into something that I had never researched before. They're called positive magnetic anomalies. And apparently most UFO and paranormal events, like all the major ones, happen in these spots. I may have figured out where UFOs are coming from, people.
Ooh.
How do you like that for a tease?
All right.
Yeah. Matt.
I'm on board. I'm excited.
Bring up the rear.
You should just feel how... All right, so I also went into iron, and not because we screwed up and went on to the same thing. Josh, everything's fine.
Maybe a little.
But I went into more of the realm of the history of using it as an object to ward off evil, basically. And then I kind of went off on that tangent a little bit, and then found more things that were hilarious that supposedly ward off evil. So we're going to go down that road.
I like it.
Good.
I'm in.
I like it.
Sign me up.
All right, so for tonight, I just want to tee up this interview with William Brown. Could some of the alien experiences, whether people are interacting in a multidimensional way with alien beings, or they're seeing stuff, or there's an abduction case, could they be targeting that person because of their DNA? And is there something in their DNA that they're looking for, or they're looking for the lack of? And so this interview with William Brown really gets into properties of gold and silver. Yes, we talk about iron and copper. There's some other things that he brings up in this interview. It's really fascinating. But he really gets into the properties of why these certain metals create, either reconstruct the DNA or stop reconstruction or possibly damage it. And either way, it could be a way that people are communicating interdimensionally with beings. So here's the interview. Just a little bit more about William Brown, because he is really fascinating guy. Like I said before, he's a biophysicist, research scientist at Taurus Tech. He performs theoretical development and experimental research to better understand the physics of complex self-organizing systems, particularly the biological system. William has worked in numerous laboratories across the country. He has an extensive background in genetic and neurobiological research and theory. He has a Bachelor of Science degree in cellular and molecular biology from Northern Arizona University, and he has a science degree in applied DNA technology from New York University. And he has a million other degrees, but...
Dude's got some creds. All right.
He's got some creds, very smart guy. Here's the interview with William Brown. Enjoy. Thank you, William, for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's jump right into it. We're talking a lot today about how certain metals can affect DNA. Silver, gold, iron, copper. Obviously, there's a lot of ancient cultures that talk about the use of copper, silver, and gold. There's been several stories that we're going to get into later in this podcast to talk about how, for some reason, some people that have had a lot of UFO experiences are don't have a lot of iron in their body. So my question to you, being your expertise in DNA, how do these metals, gold, silver, copper, iron, how do they affect the DNA in a positive or a negative way?
Yeah, so you can see evidence for both case scenarios. In terms of metals like copper, silver, iron, these metals form ions, positively charged ions, cations, when they're in the cellular environment. And these cations can be very reactive. And so that lends a lot of interactivity with the DNA and also associated proteins. And, a lot of the interaction of these metals with the DNA comes via their interaction with the proteins that are regulating DNA transcription and translation, even DNA architecture. It's 3D conformations. You can see instances where there's definite beneficial effects, but also if you have too much of these ionic species, it can be deleterious. So, for instance, an excess of copper ions has been shown to be linked with neurodegenerative diseases. For instance, you get a buildup of copper, which is an essential element for metabolic function and proper cellular energetics, DNA replication and translation. But you get a buildup of too many copper ions, and it actually starts to attack the DNA, and it can degrade it. And the cells start to die, and you get neurodegeneration. So, it's a very balanced kind of equation on what's too much, what's not enough.
How do you explain ancient people being obsessed with gold?
So,
like wear gold, it's like painted on their body, they're in gold. Like how does that affect their DNA or whatever they're trying to do?
So, that is a key point in all this, because gold doesn't form these ions. Gold, it's kind of like a noble element. It doesn't need to or want to bind with any other substances. And that actually has to do with its electron configuration, the geometry of its electron configuration. It forms this perfect 64 tetrahedral grid that its electrons are organized on. So it's perfectly satisfied. It doesn't need to exchange electrons with any other elements or anything. So gold is not deleterious to the body. You can eat gold, and it's not going to adversely affect you at all, hardly. And in fact, you can find that there are specific benefits to having gold, especially nanoclusters of gold. Very small particles of gold that are small enough that they're able to enter the cell and interact with the DNA. So, these have to be on the nanoscale size range to be able to enter into the cell. But certainly, the fact that across cultures, and particularly in ancient cultures, you had this practice of ingestion of gold. And in fact, this is still done in like India and even parts in the Western world. There's this ingestion of gold. Particularly with the alchemists, they would eat gold. There's, especially with the ancient knowledge that this practice comes from, there's a good reason for that. And so it has to do with its beneficial interaction with the DNA.
So the DNA becomes more conductive. It's like it's able to pick up more things.
So actually, one of my favorite scientific papers, is on constructing superconducting DNA lattices with gold nanoparticles. So what these nano engineers, nano machinery engineers are able to do is DNA will form these very complementary associations with gold nanospheres. So they can form these very specific tetrahedral and octagonal organizations of the DNA, and then kind of trellis them together to form superconducting circuits, where energy, information, electricity is being moved through the DNA with no resistance. And in a superconducting fashion.
Wow, interesting. So, what about silver? How's the properties of silver a little bit different? So, for instance, let's just take mythology for a little bit. Silver is used in wearing off werewolves and vampires, right? Also used in some certain ancient cultures as protection, just in general. So how does silver, from a scientific perspective, how does that work with our DNA?
Silver is a little bit more problematic, let's say, from a scientific perspective, on when you're talking about any kind of beneficial effects, because the silver will form ions, and those positively charged ions, those cations, which will bind to the proteins in the DNA. And largely, this would be considered a detrimental thing, because the silver would be displacing other metals that are absolutely required. One of the most important and functional metals for DNA is zinc. If you want to positively affect your DNA function, zinc will 100% boost your DNA activity, which has all kinds of downstream effects: boosted immunity, boosted vitality, metabolism, all that. So what you
does silver protect you though, like in a scientific point? I mean, maybe it's not
it does
for like creating your DNA, but maybe it protects. Does it protect it in a way?
It does. So silver is actually used in fairly mainstream medical practices to protect against bacterial and viral infections, because silver nitrate, the silver ion containing compounds, will neutralize and kill harmful bacteria and viruses. So taking it in small amounts is actually going to protect you against potentially harmful infections. And in many instances, they'll coat medical devices particularly ones that are going to come into contact with the body with silver, because it will protect the body and not cause much harm to the body, if any.
Interesting. Okay, so what about iron then? How does iron, like I said, we have this unique story that we're going to talk about later in this podcast with this village that has had some unique things happen with iron and UFO experiences. But how does iron affect the DNA positively or negatively?
Well, that's another interesting one, because iron is at the center of many catalytic enzymes in the body. So, these catalytic enzymes are what are facilitating all of the kind of metabolic actions that are, synthesizing DNA, opening DNA to be read, transcribing the DNA, translating the DNA. All of these functions are being carried out by protein enzymes. And the way that these proteins function is via incorporating these metal ions. And iron is prolific throughout the body. So taking iron, having a good, healthy amount of iron, again, it's kind of a balanced equation. You don't want too much, but you definitely don't want too little. You will see immediately boost responses in DNA activity, DNA function, which has the downstream effects of increasing metabolism and vitality.
Interesting. If we bring it back to things we can't quite say are true or not, if we say that people have had multiple people with certain trace elements or non-existence of these elements have had paranormal experiences or possible alien experiences, it is interesting to draw the correlation. Is it something about their DNA because they hold a certain amount of these metals in that DNA that they're attracted to?
So, and we can look at it at that kind of like physiological level and see like direct responses in the DNA with these kind of metals. But then there's also that level that science can't quite explain yet on what some of these metals are doing, particularly like silver and gold. So, the kind of energetic effects that they may be having, I don't think are understood by science yet. And so, when people are reporting like paranormal activity associated with these kind of metals, it's pointing the way that there's more to the story than just, whether it forms an ion or not, and whether it binds to the DNA in such a way, so there's other kind of interactions that might be at play there.
What kind of interactions?
Gold is actually a really good example because so it's not going to chemically react with the DNA at all, which is in one sense a really good thing, because you don't have to worry about having so much of it that it's going to start to attack the DNA, displace other metal containing enzymes, that kind of thing. But from that pure kind of physical, chemical reaction basis of life perspective, it would lead one to think that there wouldn't be any effect at all of having gold nanoparticles interacting with the DNA. But there's other kind of interactions that can take place, such as the ability for the gold to act as a chelating center where the DNA can adopt special configurations, special 3D and even 4D configurations that are being modulated and facilitated by the gold. And that ability to transfer information, energy, electrical activity that the gold has, and silver as well. So silver's the best, the highest conductive metal there is. So include silver in that. It's one of the parts of the lost science of DNA that I've been describing, is that it's not just the linear digital code. That's where science is at. It's focused on that linear digital code. There's more levels to DNA. in particular, it's 3D and 4D configurations that it can adopt. Those have very specific wave field interactions, the kind of electromagnetic fields that it generates. And so things that can play with that and facilitate the adoption of unique 3D, 4D configurations. So 4D in the sense that how does it evolve in time, the 3D configuration, the 3D geometry. That's, I think, a level of understanding of the DNA that's going to open up a whole new kind of science. And it's a really exciting area of research that we're working on here.
Amazing. That is so cool. I mean, we could just go on and talk about that forever because that's so cool. We'll have to have you back on. But this was really fascinating. And like I said, I would love to have you back and we can talk about that a little bit more, because I think a lot of people that are having interdimensional experiences might be a different way to understand what's happening to them based on the fact that their DNA could be at a 3D, 4D, 5D level. And that's really what they're interacting with, is their DNA on this different level, which is fascinating. Which I don't think anybody really talks about anymore.
Yeah. So, if people are having their DNA, adopting these very unique and kind of uncommon 3D configurations and 4D configurations, that is definitely going to affect how they're going to be receiving information and processing information, and very likely kind of expanding their awareness into what you would call like the kind of a potentially interdimensional kind of awareness. Absolutely.
Fascinating. All right, William, thank you so much for your time, and we'll have you back on to talk about some more fascinating scientific stuff.
Excellent. Thank you.
So I found it fascinating that the part where William was talking about how your DNA it operates in a third, fourth, fifth dimensional type reality, and depending on the components of the DNA, that is how people are communicating multidimensionally. There's lots of people in this field that say that they can communicate with aliens, and some people that are better at it than others. Whether it's true or not, you have to wonder if there's a certain component in their DNA that is actually giving them the ability to communicate on those different reality, different dimensional levels.
They have 5G within them.
Yeah, I thought William was really interesting, and it definitely connects to what I'm about to talk to. In the sense, my research isn't talking about necessarily the DNA if they're targeting a DNA, but the lack or having iron in your system might be part of the abduction phenomenon or why you're targeted. I don't fully understand it yet, but I came across this awesome conference on YouTube that I just have to break down. By the way, on vacation, I read like 3 books. I watched like 85 things. I have so much I want to say about this world, but this is what I want to share with you guys tonight. This conference, and I'll post it on our website, was hosted by Steve Mara and Barry Fitzgerald from the UK Awakening Expo earlier this year. And what they broke down blew my mind. It was one of the most interesting, all-encompassing, like 2.5 hours, all-encompassing, like what is going on with the UFO phenomenon. And one part was what I'm about to get into, which is really cool. So one of the most major UFO cases ever, which I think James Fox is going to come out with a documentary about it next year, takes place in Brazil, one of our favorite places, Matt.
Oh, yeah.
It takes place in scary vagina, but it takes place in another city.
Yeah, that vagina is a gold mine, let me tell you. Carry on.
I wonder how big it is. You know what I mean? There's so many cases there.
I heard it has an echo. It's as big as a house. It's as big as a house. It's a joke from Predator, the movie. So in there's a joke in Predator, the movie, where he goes,
or college, your college experience. Either way.
It all blends together.
Okay.
So in Colares, Brazil, in 1977, 1978, these UFOs came out of the water. This is an island off the coast of Brazil. and attacked the populace. This island had no police, no military, which is interesting. And about 1,200 people, in the beginning it was only reported there was like 37, but it was 1,200 people got hit by these beams. They were either sleeping, they were running outside. No matter where they were getting hit by UFO beams. And the UFOs were all types, which I think Matt actually brought up in the Vagina incident. It was cigar-shaped, saucer-shaped, every shape possible, which is just interesting. I never heard a situation where like every different shape was involved in it. And they were targeting people.
It's like a sex party.
There you go, yeah. Yeah, a dildo for everyone, whatever size you need. So, double-ended is my jam. No, it's not, but whatever.
We're sharing. Guys, we're sharing.
We're open.
Everything's fine.
We really just want you to know who we are. Okay, keep going. I'm sorry. This is very serious.
Kind of serious. It's really actually compelling, which I'm going to go into. So, out of those 1,200 people, all of them became anemic afterwards. It's like their iron was sucked from their body.
Oh, yeah. I remember that from the Vagina case. We may have even...
You might have crossed two different cases by accidentally.
Yeah,
because I looked them up.
I think it's it's Brazil, so it's all in the same area.
Right.
But yeah, this is...
No, they were similar, Matt. I actually looked them up. They were similar attack UFO incidents, like negative incidents. They were widely reported.
They were all taking iron from these people?
They took iron from all these people, 1,200
took blood from
people.
them, I guess.
Yeah. So why would they remove it? So, let me get into that.
Okay.
First thing we know from ancient past, iron is big on warding off evil. I know Matt's going to go into more specifics, but there's this old saying that iron keeps the evil eye away, whatever that old saying really means. Mm-hmm. And if you just look at most churches have an iron fence around them because it's supposed to separate the worlds, which is interesting. Iron gargoyles, raw iron is used a lot. And also, people do all these superstitious things like back in the day. They'd bury an iron knife under their doorway to ward off evil spirits. Iron nails around your home and your bed. I think all nails are iron, so I don't know how much is into that. But nailing iron horseshoes to entrances and exits, which I know Matt's going to go into, which is a big deal. Mm-hmm. Iron amulets. Yep. They wore them. They did it on purpose to ward off evil. That they knew something we didn't know. Now, going further into this, what we know is that apparently to these researchers that 9 out of 10 attacks on humans from beings or aliens with these negative events tend to happen on women during their cycle, because apparently when you're menstruating you're more likely to be anemic. Not like it doesn't happen every time, but there's a significant percentage of women when they menstruate they have less iron in their body, which is just weird. And if you look back at what they theorized in some ways, they're losing it. But if you have more iron, for some reason,
Josh, you're not saying women are weird. I just want to clarify for our ladies out there.
No, yeah. I'm saying Steve Mara and Barry Fitzgerald, they're saying this, and I'm just regurgitating their information. Yeah.
Sure.
I know. I feel like I'm in a minefield, and I'm like tiptoeing, and I've already stepped on 4 mines, and I'm like, how do I say menstruation without sounding like a creep? I was like, what do I say?
You're walking on eggshells.
Wait, hold on. I'm a woman. I don't think he was saying women were crazy because of the period.
All right, good.
No.
See, Matt? Thanks, Matt.
No.
I got wildly insecure for a second.
No, I didn't even think that either.
Were you trying to say I have PMS or something? Okay, now I'm pissed. Is that what you're saying? I'm mad now.
Yeah. Never ask your wife if she's PMSing. Just a pro tip for those people out there.
Okay, any guy, like seriously, that's the worst thing you could say to anybody. Are you PMSing? Like, what are you, fucking 12?
Right.
No.
I have to learn that once a year. It's terrible, but one day.
Pro tip. All right.
Yeah. Pro tip.
Cool.
So,
pro tip.
What they find is basically iron wards off evil enemies, and if you go into the darkness, it doesn't work as well. And they make a bunch of statements that they have the research for, but I don't have it all for you. I just want to give you like the trailer version of like the really cool information. So one of the things they said is iron in some ways associated with your T4 in your spine. And what they think is if you have less iron in your body, they can paralyze you. And your T4 is associated with that. And the T4 is where they actually are able to paralyze you, but you're awake, so you can still like see what's going on. It's not sleep paralysis, it's something different, and it's associated to that moment as well. Now, what I'm gonna transition into is not directly related to iron, but it fits in this conversation, and it's really bizarre. So Steve and Barry go on, and they basically, based on the research, say that a UFO or weird light in the sky is seen every 8 seconds around the world. Based on their research, every 8 seconds one's reported to a local place, a news or whatever, and that's what their research is saying, and they think they're being conservative. So just, again, this gives more credence to my theory that it's happening on a mass scale. We're just unaware. We're like horses with horse blinders on. We don't see it. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was fascinating. But so where are they coming from? Well, we know that SETI says that space is like unusually quiet. That's a quote straight from SETI. It's unusually quiet. So if
Like
we were
when
always,
did it get quiet?
it's always been quiet. So because they're looking in space for messages
I
or
see
anything,
what you're saying.
and they look up and they're like, it's so quiet up there, like no one's up there, because they're not coming through space. So where are they coming from? What they theorize, which is super fascinating, is called X points. The technical name for it is electron diffusion regions, aka portals. This is the scientific term for portals, coming from NASA. Real science, not like, oh, portals are real, bro. And what
I'm on board. I'm on board for portals all day.
So what are these places scientifically? They're also positive magnetic anomalies. Not anomalous like anomalous thing you see in the sky. That's a scientific term as well. And all that means is that whatever instrument you're using is reading, and that area is exceeding the average magnetic field strength and is unusually related to more strongly magnetic rocks, including iron. So also, which is super weird about these areas, which I'll get into how many of these things are reported there, is they tend to not promote bacterial development. So there's less bacteria in these areas, which they don't go into, but they just theorize, like, isn't that interesting? If you're flying around to a different planet, you don't want to get their bacteria, because what do we learn? We show up somewhere across the world to indigenous people, we wipe them out with bacteria, or some sort of disease. I thought that was just an interesting point.
Wow.
So what they went into was they started taking like every major UFO event and paranormal event in the last 100 years, and like 98% of them all line up with a strong positive magnetic anomaly. Not just like, kind of strong, like the top tier stuff. When you look at these maps, you can download Google Earth and you can put on a filter and it'll show you where everything is. And it's crazy. My brother's been having all these experiences lately, and he's had these crazy experiences doing the crazy blood rites and these ancient rituals to try to summon evil and dark shit. It's definitely a part of the world that
Holy crap,
I'm not into.
We have to talk to your bro at some point. We have to.
Yeah,
We
definitely. I mean,
they're getting into some weird stuff. It's like it's
PG,
interesting.
We need to hear
he's
about
doing
this.
it like all wrong, like all the things that we talk about that you shouldn't do because bad shit will happen to you. That's what he's doing.
But I love
Exactly.
that he's doing it, because
Yeah.
you need these pioneers in this field who'll just go out
No,
recklessly.
I respect it, but I would
endanger
never do
their,
it.
soul.
Yeah. No, dude. Yeah, it's dark shit. I would never do it. Never recommend it. But I'm kind of like interested to see what happens. So just don't come to my house when you get a weird attachment, dude. They're like they're like taking mushrooms or smoking DMT and then like doing an ancient blood ritual where they take their own blood, and it's as crazy as you can get, and it's kind of working.
Wow.
And we'll interview that. We'll tee up that next time or something. But
Nice.
okay. So back on track here. They show this crazy video from Japan where this volcano was erupting. It's right on top of a positive magnetic anomaly, and there's just state TV on it. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this huge light forms, and these things start shooting out of it, like for 15 minutes, and it closes. It's just, there's so much. And if you just go, like, any major video or anything, you just kind of search it and go on Google Earth to the right spot, they're almost all over these positive magnetic anomalies. I'm not saying they can't go other places, because clearly there's cases that exist outside of that. They just cleared it. They seem to be coming through those and leaving that way, and then mostly operating in that space.
And those, and if I remember correctly from that NASA report, those spots, what they're calling X spots, are connected to the sun. So you know how we hear about a lot of people talking about ancient travel through the sun, or even secret space people talk about this all the time, that like they had somehow traveled through some portal through the sun. I mean, I've heard that a lot. So that's where these X spots are coming from, is some kind of connection with the sun.
Interesting. I didn't hear that. That's interesting. We got to go deeper on that. So what else did I find out? Lieutenant Colonel Philip J. Corso, his famous book, Day After Roswell, and said in 1982 the U.S. government were monitoring UFO activity around 7 major positive magnetic anomalies. So he said that in a book a long time ago, and that was just 7 major places. They seem to be happening all over the world. What are some of the famous encounters that happened? Just to list them really quick. The Flatwood Monsters incident, the Hopkinville Goblet encounter, Skinwalker Ranch, the Mothman prophecies, Travis Walton abduction, the Ariel School thing in Africa, all of them. Now, believe me, there's a lot of anomalies. When you look at the map.
Really cool, Josh.
I'm telling you, I think like literally you could probably show up to one of these areas, and if you just sat for a couple of days, you would see something. And that's what they're basically saying. And I was like, I'm blown away.
Field
I
trip.
never heard. You hear portals and hot spots, but you don't hear the science of why it's a hot spot, really. This is the first time I've been like, oh, you're onto something, mother truckers. You know what you're talking about. But I want to end it with this. This is the interesting part that ties it back to disclosure. And that is that the Nimitz incident. So they tracked the Nimitz incident, and it was not on a positive magnetic anomaly. In fact, it wasn't close. It was like the opposite. So it doesn't fit their mold. Doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't alien, but they did a paper trail incident on it, and they really went incident. I don't know what that means. They did some deep research, and come to find out, the Nimitz carrier group was testing an experimental new vehicle tracking system, like multiple different systems that were very state of the art, purposely built to track things moving way faster than usual. They were literally testing it, and that's all. There's a paper trail to show that. So just ask yourself.
So why did they? Not only were they tracking things with that thing, but why did they build that technology to begin with? You know, why did they need to track something that was that fast?
Because maybe they already knew about this stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
Okay, wait. I have another question. So, in these incidents that you just listed, that are all in these hot spots or X marks the spot, X spots, was there any depletion of iron in these people? Did that come up in the report?
No, but they were just tying it to a lot of these events in these areas, like especially the negative ones, are related to women who have low amounts of iron in their body. That was kind of the crossover. It doesn't perfectly connect to the iron, but it kind of all worked all together because of the first incident in Brazil. I know it's not a perfect line through it, but I had to go into this research because it was so crazy, and I had to fit it into our narrative here. The last thing I just want to say before we move on to Matt's stuff is that this also correlates perfectly with Missing 411. All the national parks, all the clusters that David Paulides talks about are in positive magnetic anomalies, which is scary. Folks, just to be clear, I'm still all in love and light. I think most interactions are love and light. If you go at it with a childlike innocence and you're all positive about it, you're going to attract positive things. I think there are negative things out there, but only if you ask for it, only if you're in a dark place. And I even though I really do believe the negative side of all this is real, I think just carry yourself an iron amulet around and keep your iron levels up. Don't get anemic. Stay out of positive magnetic anomalies and attract the good ones. Because I don't know if the good ones are coming through here either. I don't know if they all do, but it's definitely compelling, and I'm going to follow the research of these guys.
Josh, and by the way, Johnny Enoch says drink whiskey and smoke cigars. And then you're good. You got the iron amulet and the whiskey and cigar, and you're good. You're totally covered.
Yeah, it's a great combination. Look, Josh, this is could be a controversial hot take, but are you basically saying, and I'm putting words in your mouth here,
okay, as long as it's not a finger,
veganism and vegetarianism is some evil alien plot to... No, I'm kidding.
Well,
funny.
Okay, but that's not true because you take supplements and you get high amounts of iron from spinach, broccoli. I can name a whole bunch of stuff. So it's not completely, you're not completely void of iron.
Listen, Melissa, don't shit all over my anti-vegetarian jokes. I'm not anti-vegetarian. I love you people. Save the animals.
You said vegan. Yeah. Look, I'm vegan 80% of the time. The 20% of the time, I'm usually drinking and eating cheese and having maybe a piece of chicken or something.
All right. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
So mostly.
Anyway.
Okay.
So one more thing with Josh's thing. So the X marks the spot NASA research. So they don't know why it hits when it hits and for how long it'll be open. So that's the craziest thing. So they're like chasing the whole globe, waiting for this perfect setting where this connection from the sun meets the electrons at the perfect moment, and then it opens up, and then yes, something comes through or whatever happens. But they don't know, so they're like chasing these openings because they're random.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they're not all hitting in Roswell, or like they're not all in this one place in this one park.
That's where you get flaps.
Random all over the place. They never know when they're going to hit.
Do we know that they're random? Like, could something be directing this energy? I'm going to put that out there, a hypothetical.
Well, it seems like the locations might not be random, but when they come through is random.
Right.
No. The locations are random too. So, for instance, they're not always opening up in those places that have a different electromagnetic field. Yes, there's activity there, but what NASA is testing is so random that they can't figure out when and where it'll open up and hit.
Huh.
But that doesn't mean that like Sedona's not a portal, or a national park isn't a portal. There's could be a portal for other reasons, but this specific NASA research, they're literally waiting for one to open to study it. They just don't know when or how.
They can measure it, like they can when it does happen, they can be like, oh, that just popped up on our system. We need to go there.
Right. I don't know how they test it, but that was in the research that they did, which again, that goes back to Matt saying, maybe someone's controlling it. And I would have to say it's definitely the Black Knight.
Black Knight's real.
Oh boy.
Fight. But for real, they don't know, which is even just more random. Maybe someone knows. I don't know.
Huh. Very
The
interesting.
Freemasons.
I feel like we're getting somewhere finally as a society when it comes to ufology. In this exciting times.
Yep.
I'm not expecting much in a couple of weeks. I feel like it's going to be a big letdown, but I feel like still we're stepping in the right direction. And I worry about the future, but God, I couldn't be alive in a more exciting time when it comes to disclosure.
Yeah.
True that.
Totally.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right,
That was
Mr. O'Connor.
interesting. That was so interesting. Okay, try to trump
good
that,
stuff.
Matt. Try.
Well, just building off what you've gone into there on the whole iron thing and the UFOs, I had a bit of a UFO burnout, so I wanted to go into more supernatural stuff.
Ooh, good. I'm hungry for it.
Yeah. When you come to iron, supernatural stuff is it's everywhere.
Really? Okay.
So it is a magic. Well, it's like the anti-magic, which is interesting.
Huh.
And there's a few different theories about why that is. I guess it's one of these metals that we worked with that was like the beginning of our, alchemical understanding of technology and science and stuff, and like putting metals together and make something stronger. And it's like the anti-nature spirit kind of thing of finding whatever's in the ground and just using it as it is kind of thing. Anyway.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I looked into iron as and here's my pronunciation of this word. It's called apotropaic. Apotropaic. There you go.
Oh my God, did he
3
say
times.
something wrong on our podcast?
Apotropaic.
Can you?
What? What just happened?
I'm sorry.
I looked down to open a sandwich.
Apotropaic. Cut that out. No. Anyway, that word means basically it's an object that wards off evil. So why iron? So we've talked about gold before, about its properties. We know silver, things like silver and copper have these like antimicrobial properties where they kind of kill germs. So it makes sense that people got the idea that this was some sort of magic metal, But iron has a couple of special things behind it. So, it's magnetic, obviously. So they've worked out, iron, you could float it in a bowl of water, and if you're at sea, and it would act as a compass for you, It would have, it's a great electric conductor, so you could pass electricity through it. And so the electric spark, I guess, was thought by some to be this life energy, I guess, back in the day, back when they didn't really know what was going on there. And it's so you could pass this, electric shock through a piece of metal and it would come out the other side seemingly unchanged. So it had this conductive energy about it. Obviously, the Great Iron Age itself was like this huge advancement in human technology. Basically because the advancement of weaponry, and it allowed civilizations to basically conquer other civilizations who weren't quite so advanced into the metallurgy of creating this wonderful material, because it made the weapons so much stronger. I think copper was used. Or was it bronze? Bronze, I think, was used for weapons before that. And when they were using these iron alloys and stuff in their weapons against these more primitive cultures, it would just like literally cut through all their weapons, and it was just like this amazing steel. But I think the biggest thing is that so iron. I think I said this about gold too. Like it comes from the sky. Like it shoots down from the sky. It's like it's not gold was not like originally found like dug within the earth. It was found because it was came from meteorites. And iron is pretty similar. So iron is found naturally in the ground, obviously, but it's also one of these things that it came from like exploding stars and supernova, which is pretty interesting too. So they ancient cultures would see these shooting star meteorites hit the ground, and they'd go to dig up this whatever it was made of, and it was like this stardust, this iron that basically came from the heavens, and it was this crazy material that had all these properties, and they were able to make things of it, and it was super special, obviously. So even even before, I guess, the Iron Age itself, one of the oldest iron artifacts ever found is a dagger that was found in the tomb of Tutankhamun. And this was 3,200 BCE, which is about 2,000 years before the Iron Age. So the metal in Tutankhamun's dagger was worked from an iron that had been a gift from the gods, apparently, according to their writings. And they called it the solidified tears of the sun that had fallen to the earth from meteorites. Yeah. And so go on.
Usually daggers in ancient times were used in ceremonies, magic ceremonies. Mm-hmm. It directs the energy, so that might have been something that he was buried with because something he used in one of their ancient practices.
Yeah. And so with iron as well, there's this this notion of as above, so below, which is interesting, that it sort of pops up in a few different texts, apparently. Just a little side note there. So, as Josh mentioned before, iron frames were once popular for children's bed heads because it was said that fairies could not approach to snatch children, or there was this old idea that they would swap the infants with changelings, which was crazy.
Oh, that's creepy.
What's a changeling?
It's like a fey entity that would basically look like your child, but it was not your child. It was
a hybrid
creature.
Yeah, it's a fucking hybrid.
So they would steal your child and replace it with this creature. It's an old tale. But it's funny, like specifically to combat this problem, they would put iron scissors in the cradle to prevent fairies from stealing your child.
Okay, well, wasn't there other dangers with iron scissors?
Well, I think this is pretty widely recommended by most pediatricians, Melissa. Put a pair of scissors in with your child.
What is this, the 80s? Like no helmets? Like you put scissors in the baby crib? God, it's a different time.
Scissors in the baby crib, and all women are PMSing. You guys are super in trouble right now.
We're on a roll tonight. We're on a roll. So other things like iron bands around a coffin of purported witch or vampires were believed to prevent them from escaping tombs. Same thing, like you said, Josh, with the fence around a church or also a graveyard to keep the dead souls from getting out. So it was really this kind of, it was really this kind of interesting grounding anti-magic property. So the people believe that the reason that it was supposed to be not a weapon, but a tool that you could use against the Fey folk was that it would stop them being able to use magic, which is interesting. It would sort of ground them in this reality, so they couldn't use other stuff.
Well, that makes sense though, because what Josh was saying is that they would take it out of their blood so that they could interact with them.
So they were more malleable. Yeah,
they weren't able to communicate with them on a multidimensional level. However they wanted to communicate with them. So
negative or positive,
Negative or positive, correct.
And so there's some interesting there's that classic old image of the ghostly figure rattling chains, down in a haunted house.
Oh, yeah.
And supposedly there were chains of iron that had bound the spirit to this plane, and it couldn't leave because of these chains, because it was iron.
Wow, that's interesting.
I never put that together. Wow, that's cool.
That's cool.
So we talked about the iron horseshoes as well, right? So the basic idea was, and I actually saw this in Ireland quite a bit too when I did a little student tour of Ireland is another story. And anyway, that's for another day.
Was there a vagina city there?
Very scary vagina.
Very scary vagina in Ireland.
And a lot of Guinness. Anyway.
Lots of different shapes.
It's still apparently done today.
Circular. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Horseshoe shaped. Yeah, so horseshoes hung above doorways apparently were to keep evil from entering your house. And they also made it across thresholds, like a bar of iron at the the floor of the doorway to stop evil from entering your house. And it seems to stem from these interesting tales of blacksmiths making these Faustian deals with devils in exchange for knowledge on ironsmithing, which is this really interesting thing that pops up in a few different cultures in Europe and Russia. I think it popped up a few times as well. And the classic tale, I guess, in Europe was this idea of the story of Saint Saint Dunstan and the devil. The story's called. And this happens, bum, bum, bum. Yeah, so apparently the devil comes in the form of a comely maiden of virtue true.
Comely maiden?
Yeah, what is that? I have so much to think about and say. What does that mean?
What does it even mean?
It's not what you think it is, but comely means like, I think it means, let me look it up real quick. It means...
Whatever it means, it's wrong.
Attractive girl. She's
and
an attractive
they call
girl.
that comely?
It doesn't mean
comely.
That. There's no way.
Yeah.
What?
All right. Comely.
It's
I'm going to say
not quite
that.
as dirty as what you're thinking, but yeah. It's
I'm
attractive.
Use it.
Okay, so an attractive girl comes in to tempt a hardworking and honest blacksmith away from his work, right?
Yeah. The story of every man who falls in love and gets mad about it.
Tell me about it. Happens
I'm
to me
just
daily.
trying to work hard here. Stop bringing your boobs in my face. Oh my god!
Get out of here.
Men are like, seriously. Okay, go on. Okay, he's just trying to do his work. You know, can't help looking at your boobs.
It's the classic tale of the patriarchy for sure. So the blacksmith immediately sees through this disguise because apparently he sees that this temptress has cloven hooves at the bottom of her dress.
Oh,
so. Using his tongs to grasp the devil's snout, so basically grabs it by the nose with his his iron tongs.
This is getting really kinky right now. Okay, keep going.
Yeah.
I haven't seen this section of Pornhub yet.
He tweaks her nipples. No, he didn't do that. He promptly showed her the door and said, "Please, kindly leave, Mrs. Devil."
Your feet are way too big, and I'm not into that. I have a fetish for small, wrapped feet. Okay,
right.
Go ahead.
Goat feet aren't my thing. So, the devil returns the next day. He has another crack at it. This guy is tenacious. Anyway, so the next day he returns in the guise of a wealthy merchant and offers the blacksmith riches in exchange for some sort of exclusive trade deal. The devil had again apparently overlooked suitable footwear in his disguise, and the cloven hooves again gave him away. The devil's really fucking bad at this game.
Yeah.
Put some fucking shoes on, bro. Anyway, the blacksmith once again grabs him with his metal tongs, and this time he means business. So he apparently nails a red-hot horseshoe to the devil's hoof, binding him to this plane and rendering him powerless and in great pain. So the devil's like howling because he can't do anything. He can't use his magic because he's apparently bound with this iron horseshoe that's pinned to his foot. So the devil promises then to never bother any family who hangs one of these blacksmith's horseshoes above the door of their house. So maybe it was a pretty good business idea.
This is a really great advertising campaign. You know what I mean? Like, create a whole story of fear, and then be like, but if you buy one of my horseshoes, they're 10% off until Friday.
Exactly.
No devil will bother you.
Right. Excellent marketing tool, this guy. Knew his stuff. So basically that's where the story comes of hanging a horseshoe above your door because the blacksmith is making it safe for you.
Well, you could go it could be a clever way of trying to sell a product, but maybe that story was made up to get people to understand that you need to use a horseshoe or iron to protect yourself against evil spirits, and that story is just a clever story to get everyone on board, when really the truth is much deeper and much darker and much, you know what I mean? Like, it's an allegorical story, that's all that is.
Could be.
It might have,
true.
it could have some truth to it. And that's what they're just using to convince the masses, the peasants.
Yeah. So so that's basically the story of the hoof, the horseshoe and stuff. But I also found a really interesting little piece in the Bible, and it's in Judges, verse 1 to 119.
One of my favorite verses.
It's a classic, yeah.
Yeah. I've never heard of it.
So God was apparently unable to lead the nation of Judah to victory against the valley men due to them having chariots of iron.
Ooh, that's
so this shit even stops God.
Well, who's God? God's a fucking alien coming through positive magnetic anomalies. That's really interesting, actually. I know you're going down a jokey path, but that is compelling. That is compelling, Matt. Go on.
So
maybe it's not an X, maybe it's a cross.
Oh, we've broken it. We've done it, guys.
Who's cuddling now?
Pack it up. We're done. We just broke it.
We won.
We won. Show's over. I gotta go drink some more.
Show's over. We did it, guys. We did it.
That's great.
Anyway,
here's
the verse.
There's still more to talk about. Okay.
Here's a little verse. And the Lord was with Judah, and he drove out the inhabitants of the mountain, but could not drive out the inhabitants of the valley because they had chariots of iron. So God could not fuck with this stuff, which is fascinating. Anyway.
Well, wow. I mean, on Ancient Aliens, we say God was an alien. So, I mean,
right.
That's what TV says. So,
yep.
Yeah, we
here
can
we
say
are. We're back full circle.
Making connections. So anyway, I have a brief little thing at the end, which I thought was hilarious when I was looking up these objects that were warding off evil. And I came across two different objects, one from ancient Greece, the other from the ancient Celtic region of the UK, basically. The ancient Greek had this statue, right? It was a sculpture, and it was called the Herm, H-E-R-M, basically of Hermes. Hermes, the god. He was kind of the protector of travel and all that sort of stuff. So
he's also the god of knowledge, yes.
Okay, there you go. Mm-hmm. So they would put these statues at crossroads, in front of buildings, people's homes, and it was, again, to ward off evil. This, let me get to this, apotropaic. Yes, fucking nailed it that time. All right.
Sounded good.
Yeah. So it consisted, here's what it looked like. Consisted of, it's a stone or wooden column, right? 4 sides to this column is like a block. 4 being apparently a number associated with Hermes. Yeah. Anyway, the only thing on this block, at the top of the block was the man's head, and it was like they hadn't ever finished carving the rest of the guy's body, except for the peen. They put a dong hanging down halfway down where it should be. Related
Wait,
to the
a
head
Greek dong though, so probably a tiny gong, because big dongs were like considered barbaric back then, right? So it's tiny dong. Give me the size.
So here's the thing, Josh. There were a lot of tiny little flaccid penises, but there were some hermas, that also had an erect penis, a big triumphant bastard who was like, "Stay back, evil, lest they be fucked."
I will try fuck you, yeah.
Yeah. So.
No comely girl is going to come close to me with this erect penis.
Comely girl.
They might. There was apparently stories of people doing horrible things to these statues. One being to desecrate these sculptures by knocking the dong off, which apparently was a terrible, terrible omen, and people would be killed for that. So don't touch the dong. Anyway, now we go to ancient Ireland, the Celts. And they had this figure, and man, this is I'm glad we're doing this right at the end of the podcast, but this was called the Sheila na Gig, a Celtic name, and there were these figurative carvings of naked women displaying an exaggerated vulva, or vagina, if you will.
And we're back to Brazil.
Exaggerated. Give me details. What's that mean? Like large?
So you gotta
like,
look
has
these
an
up for
echo?
yourself. Oh man, this is crazy. So, so basically, they would be these sculptures that are on the side of churches, different buildings, and it was supposedly to ward off evil. Some different places saying it came from, old fertility, Celtic deities. Other people saying that there was this idea that showing demons your genitalia would scare them off, which is crazy. I would think the devil would be like, maybe he passed that around as a little like, oh yeah, you want to scare the devil, show him your cash and prizes, your bits and pieces, and then yeah, and then he gets to have a little look-see.
You show me yours, I'll show you mine.
Yeah.
I'll
post up in the show notes. There's this really funny. I
don't know how big these vulvas are, but to me, if they're showing the vulva in many different aspects of understanding what that is a portal, is a vortex, is like no matter how you dissect it, it's always this understanding of this. The vulva is like a portal. So I don't know. Maybe it's like marking a place where things come through, and they've noticed it, so they put one of these, vulvas there.
Things go in, things come through. Sure. comely lasses.
Where
anyway,
things come through.
I'll have to. Things go in, things come out.
It's crazy. I was really trying to be serious that time. I was trying to be serious this time.
No, I know. We couldn't help it. We're fucking children. I get it. We're horrible, horrible children. Anyway,
are you done with all of your sex?
I am. I'm mostly done. Yeah, I am done. I just want to say that I'll post this awesome photo of basically this whole idea where there's this really fun rendering of this voluptuous vanquisher of evil who's like triumphantly lifting the front of her dress to expose her cash and prizes to this really like horrified and disgusted demon who's like, oh my god, don't do that.
Not scary vagina. Like
yeah, and she's like, fucking cop this, you jerk. And he's like, oh no. So
it's as big as a house.
Ladies, if you encounter some demons, you just
work up a hard on and walk around the house with big dick energy, and you're gonna be fine.
Wait,
ladies?
But women can't get
Oh wait, sorry.
hard-ons.
Yeah, you're right. No, I was thinking.
Are you married?
I backed up. Sorry. I was thinking
You know how this
the
works,
penis
right?
part. Yeah. I was just.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So either way,
I was
ladies and gents,
tying it in,
if you want it, maybe you tell your brother this. If he's encountering demons, expose himself to them, and it apparently makes them recoil in disgust. Anyway, history. Hell of a thing.
Wow. Okay. So wait, I just want to bring it full circle because that's what I do. We start off really serious. We talked about really what's happened with your DNA and gold and silver and iron. We talked about all that stuff, and we came up with some interesting theories about that, about what the extraterrestrials, aliens, interdimensional beings are trying to possibly either communicate with you with or take out of your system so they can communicate with you. Sorry, too many jokes.
We can do this.
I can't talk.
It's okay.
And then we really went far with iron objects that are voluptuous and hard. So all I can say is be careful what you're ingesting.
Sure. Yeah. Keep it down to 1 or 2 comely lasses a week. Yeah.
Because you'll be only protected if it's iron.
Yeah.
And it's heavy.
Great.
Okay. All right. So I prefer that ending. What I'm trying to say is we love you and want you to come back, so protect yourself with iron.
Yes.
Yes.
We love you all. Yes.
We
Eat gold.
you all.
Eat iron.
And-
yes.
okay,
Write reviews.
Okay.
All right.
And
Scary
good night.
vagina.
Goodbye.